Hello to you, my lovely listener. It's me, Medium Jason Paul, and it's as lovely as it ever is to have you here with me. Now, this next guest who's on today, his name, Mark Mezadourian. He works as an intuitive who connects with angels, guides, ancestors, and animal guides to offer spiritual support. He made me laugh a lot because you can tell when someone explains something who's had a rich tapestry of experience, there's a certain humour one can have. And Mark did make me smile a lot through this conversation. He describes how he had a spiritual awakening after an anxiety attack in 1997. His first powerful experience involved calling on Archangel Michael to clear dark energy from his apartment, and how spirituality helped him realise it's not all on me. We talked about the role of unconditional love as a healing force, and how us empaths and sensitive people, we need time alone sometimes, and we can really absorb the energy of negative people and people who are mood hoovers. We feel it more than anything. So, how do we protect our energy and protect our environment? That's what me and Mark talk about today on this conversation. We also talk about how Mark starts the day with prayer, intention, and spiritual connection, and what that really does for him energetically. And there's a lot to be said in what we discuss. We also discuss how guidance can arrive through songs, synchronicities, and repeated messages. We can get signs from the other side and question them so often. I hear all the time people saying, well, I've got this, but how do I know it's from the other side? Quite frankly, I think it's all about how it makes you feel. Sometimes I think when I go back in my journey, I'd want the spirit world to slap me in the face with a 2-ton lorry before I finally realised that they were real. I've needed a lot of evidence along the way, and I've needed a lot of convincing, because I'm not someone that came to even believe this easily, which might sound crazy considering my granddad was a medium. But me and Mark, we do have a laugh on this interview today, and he's a lovely soul, and he does talk as well about how really just listen to the way that you feel rather than just going through life ignoring it. So, Mark, firstly, welcome to the Soul Sync podcast.
Thank you so much, Jason. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. So, I guess let's start. Introduce yourself, Mark. I know a bit about you, but please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm an intuitive who specializes in connecting with angels and guides. And my goal with that work is to make that process simple, practical, and repeatable. So it's not woo-woo, it's not out there, that it's very practical and accessible. And that we are all hardwired for intuition and to heal, and to very simply build a relationship with the guides that we have the most affinity for, which could be angels, could be guides, could be ancestors, could be animals, and to let that relationship, those relationships, make the world bigger. So the whole point of spirituality is to add options, to make the world bigger. And in times where we feel constricted by anything, anxiety, fear, whatever it is, to add something that makes the world bigger for us.
How did you come into this world? Not literally. I probably know the answer to that one, Mark. But how long have you been in this world?
The spiritual world. When I was 30 in 1997, I had an anxiety attack that was super informative, and out of that I became hyper spiritual. And from being a very cynical person, the anxiety attack let me know like what I was doing wasn't working. And my sister happened to be working with angels at the time, and she introduced me to concepts. We started practicing things, started to pray. And being a cynical person, I wasn't at all interested in what other people said about angels. My question was like, well, how does this work? What happens? And a dramatic thing happened to that was part of the anxiety attack, where I had gone away for 2 months and left my apartment in the care of some people, and the woman went on a drug binge in my apartment. So there's this very dark energy when I came back. And it lingered. I had no idea how to get rid of it. And I got advice, and eventually, and most of which I would not do now, but like citrus and sea salt, all good. But the main advice was to call an Archangel Michael. So on the day I chose to reclaim my apartment, I was in the bedroom. There's a long hallway in the living room, and I'm yelling, "Get the bleep out of my," whoever the energy was, get the bleep out of my apartment. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this like black bear figure in the front room. And I instinctively threw the glass bowl of citrus down the hallway. It landed perfectly in the center of the room. The toilet flushed and it was gone. So my question to that was, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, what happened? What happened? What actually happened? What created that? So I go to work and then I come back and the heat was on. The electricity was all screwed up after all this happened. So it was this thing like heat was restored. So this prompted me into this inquiry and getting to know the angels, getting to know Archangel Michael. And I started to wake up every morning on my digital clock at 4:44, this kind of angel hello, and started to have synchronicities. And just got in this feedback loop, which created this space, which remains to this day of like, well, what did they say? I know what I think. What do they say? And how can we make the world bigger?
What was your life looking like before this was all happening? Because it sounds like it was coming to a climax point of this can't go on anymore. And
there was a lot of stress. There was a lot of stress happening, and just unhappiness. I was depressed, and a lot of weight and this and that. And what shifted was this perspective of it's not all on me, that there is support and that the support is loving. Basically introduced unconditional love into my life, and just seeing where perhaps everything that we're aware of that doesn't work, any unkindness, any violence, any absence of encouragement or hoarding is based in conditional love or absence of love, and just seeing unconditional love as a solution. And what is it like? How do we connect into that? How do we do that momentarily? How do we do that consistently? How do we let that energy grow and expand? And so with the goal of living on a harmonious planet where everyone's needs are met.
It's interesting because as you're saying that, I think so often it takes to a certain point in our life, and you were making me think that, in my life, I ran and ran and ran and ran and ran. And eventually I just thought, nothing is making me happy here, and it's funny because when you almost said it's not all on me as well, that makes me think that you was thinking and feeling that you was having to have all the answers yourself and to sort of be alone on this planet. It sounds like a separation of connection. And then once you had that connection, things started flowing.
Do you think also just being an empath, which I suspect many people who will watch this are, I was used to just absorbing everything and trying to make order of it, and just seeing what if I don't do that? What if, one of the things I've learned in working with angels is to influence our environment. Thank you, angels, for surrounding me with 1,000 meters of unconditional love. Thank you, angels, for surrounding all my environments and encounters with love. So we're in a different space and something different can happen.
It's almost like when you try to... Go on.
But just more able to be present. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's almost like it reminds me, again, of parts of my life. And I think so many of us, we try to control our lives in every sense. We've got bills to pay, mortgages that need paying. We've got 1,000,001 things we're running around trying to do. We don't even think that we have a moment to sit there and even get the angel's number up, so to speak, on our phone, Mark.
Yes.
And, there suddenly becomes a point, I think, in people's lives when they have these almost like awakenings that it seems to have to get to a point of, I've tried everything. And I tried to think that, almost like the more and more I was trying to control my life, the more out of control it felt.
We'll be right back.
Hello there, Soul Sync. It's me. I interrupt this episode for just a moment to ask, if you find this podcast at all helpful, please leave a review on the platform where you listen to them. It helps other people to find it, and it means the world to me. Now, enjoy your episode.
Yes. Michael Beckwith talks about, we get into spirituality, we learn through suffering or insight, and most people enter the spiritual path by suffering, and then we shift into insight in whatever way that takes form, usually some kind of technique. And how do we maintain, this is the eternal question, how do we maintain being in tune? For me, it's starting the day with it, starting the day with a strong intention or prayer.
Well, it's setting the day off on the right vibe. There's a lot to be said for that old thing of stubbing your toe as you get out of bed, and the rest of the day is an absolute bloody nightmare, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah.
So to some people, and even me, Mark, I have to be honest with you, I'm not someone who's calling the angels in every day. Maybe
Sure.
I'm missing a trick here. I am a medium. I'm asking my guides to be around me, but I probably have neglected the angels, which probably, may make me feel quite silly now. So what are you doing there? Talk us through what you've seen, because to some people listening to this, they're going to think, you're away with the fairies. And
I understand that. So as I mentioned, I'm not like a lighthearted guy. So, I enjoy humor a lot, but I'm not like Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. And with this, there's a practicality to it. Angels are everywhere in popular culture for centuries. And it's just seeing, well, what if we had a relationship with them? I do think there's a space where the universe is going to find the open door, be that, connecting with deceased loved ones, be that animal guides living or passed away, be that a goddess, a guide, be that musicians, Jim Morrison, or a poet like Maya Angelou or David Bowie, who's a great guide, that the mass communicators make fantastic guides. And we already have a relationship with them, or William Blake, or Helma af Klint. But the angels too, and just saying like what resonates for you is the main thing. I think what affinity do you have? That there's not one way it goes. And I think with it's the 5,000 channel satellite dish, which is like, who is loudest for you? Do you have a team? Can I ask, do you have a team that you work with of guides, or is it one particular guide, or how does that work for you?
So it's a very good question, actually. And I think it's one of these topics that a lot of people get a bit hung up about on their spiritual journey, because I remember people at the very beginning of my journey saying, oh, my guide's here, whoever it is, and this guide's here. And I'd think, well, I don't know. Who are any of my guides? I don't know who they are. In all honesty, I know bits about my guides, and I do have a number, one being my actual granddad, who was a medium, who has now come back as a guide of mine, but which is very interesting. And he is all around me, I think, for this period of my life. And I have a lady that is associated with the sort of Tudor era, where she was a theatre lady. And I think a lot of my fiery personality and probably pizzazz, they might say, comes from that guide. But I'm still on an ever-growing mission of trying to make more time for them, Mark, which is, something I think we all need to be probably doing a bit more of. It's actually about sitting there and having that time and allowing yourself the time, isn't it?
It is. There's not one way. I think there's not a cookie cutter here, but there is technique. And the technique would be, thank you, angels, for helping me in every single part of my life. Thank you to my entire spirit team for helping me in every single part of my life. And just seeing what happens. If we think of as people, with any spiritual inclination, what is our role? And perhaps what we could do best is be clear to ourselves and to the universe of what we want to have happen. So thank you, angels, goddesses, and guides, for this peaceful planet. Thank you for everyone thriving. Thank you for everyone having their needs met and exceeded. Thank you for no one getting lost and everyone feeling seen, heard, and encouraged. Just putting forward that intention and then seeing who shows up or who gets your attention. And that can come in a myriad of ways. I get a lot of guidance through songs, the repetition of songs. I had a marriage that ended, and the day after it ended. I heard the Florence and the Machine song, Dog Days Are Over, like an absurd amount of times until I was laughing, And years ago, I kept hearing Golden Years by David Bowie. And I was about to text a spiritual friend, like, what do you think? And I remember the first line, don't let me hear you say that life's taking you nowhere, angel. Or Fleetwood Mac's Don't Stop. We've heard that song 1,000 times, but I was in a store one day and it was playing and just heard this, like, yesterday's gone. It'll be better than before. So that's just one example of the different ways that the universe is going to get our attention. And maybe it's up to us to pay attention, and maybe not every single second, but to put forward any intention, and the intention would be because we know that more is possible. We know that this is not the way things should be in terms of disregarding people and being afraid of each other. That we know that we are connected and that there is more happening.
How was
accessing that? Mm-hmm.
How was your life? Because I understand the power of intention. As a medium, and I'll tell you a funny story. So I've been trying to do a manifesting series at the start of the year for this podcast. And the law of attraction and these sorts of things is something that I came into in my life first when I was 18, when that book, the Rhonda Byrne book, that, I've got all sorts of mixed thoughts about the law of attraction and how it's portrayed in there, because I think it doesn't really get to the root of the issue, which is it's not wishful thinking. If your actions are not aligning, it doesn't matter if you take 250 steps and say thank you, or you don't do the right things or have the right intent, your life isn't going to change,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that book, it caused me confusion on my journey, quite frankly, because I was manifesting in a lot of things, but I couldn't quite work out why I was and why I wasn't. But you talk about the power of intent, and obviously, that with the angels as well, and how that can be used and harnessed. Well, what's your life, look like and change, and how does it, continue to change now that you're tapping into this energy?
There's more harmony. There's more hope. There's a sense of coherence. And the specter of spirituality for other people is typically grandiosity. Like, who do you think you are to talk to the angels? It's very humbling. It's very humbling. And it's just getting to a space where my active manifestations are for more harmony here. So which would then outpicture as more harmony on the planet as we all drop out of the fear and drop out of lack thinking, into the space of abundance. What if there's enough for everyone? And so just seeing where I'm more present and more relaxed, I have a whole lot of hope, and just recognizing we're not done. We're not done. This is not where things stop. The world is not about protecting a very small number of people. It's about everyone thriving together,
It's interesting. It's, by what you're saying there, by you inviting in that healing then goes out through you and it ripples. And I was actually saying this to my mum last night.
Yeah.
Because we got someone in our life at the moment that's causing us a right pain in the arse, to be quite honest with you, Mark. And I was trying to explain to her, karma, what this person is doing is so awful that I'll tell you what it is in very brief. So this person has taken a ring that doesn't belong to them, and they are wearing that ring now every day. So I was saying to my mum, that is a very bad karmic thing to do, because that person is in the spirit world and that doesn't belong to you. And I was trying to explain to her, because she is into this sort of world, Mark, to some degree. I once took her to a circle and she just... Well, she said she'd never go back again, but that's a whole other story. But I was explaining that I believe when you go to the spirit world, what happens is you sort of have this life review where every single person that you have touched, that's touched, it's almost like it just goes out like an ocean, to everyone you've even said thank you to or held a door for, So what you're saying there, is interesting about that, because it is that act of kindness and love that is the only thing that exists. Fear is just the absence of love, isn't it?
Yeah. And let's put forward intention without attaching to the how. Let's just see that ring being returned to where you want it to be. And without any drama, just seeing it done.
That's very nice. You go straight to the ring. You get straight down to the business. The ring was taken a very long time ago, Mark, which was the essence of what I was saying to my mum is that was taken 6 years ago. You're wearing it for 6 years. That's very bad karmically, but that's very nice, Mark. Thank you. I'm passing that on to my mum.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But I think that's the thing, which is, so the stories are loud, and it's just seeing where basically getting into what's the highest good, and letting the universe sort it out, how that's going to happen. Years ago, I think there's like 10 things to talk about, but if we move away from predictive things, I don't get predictive information. I occasionally get a little heads up of like, hey, this thing, but the role of an intuitive for me is like, not like this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, because we have free will. But just seeing where the angels kind of know what's happening. And there's two stories. One, if I had a client who broke up with a boyfriend after not doing that for a long time, then moved in with a roommate who discovered was crazy. And the question was like, what did she do? And we prayed, and then the roommate got a boyfriend and it was gone the whole time. So the universe sorted that out. Another one is years ago, had a client who was wondering how to break up with a boyfriend. And the entire half-hour session, the angels were like, where are you going to go when you break up with the boyfriend? Where are you going to go? They spent the whole time about what's next. The client called me the day after the reading, and they had gone home after the reading, and there was a sheriff there with a restraining order saying you got 20 minutes to pack your stuff. So she knew where to go. So just seeing the universe at work of being helpful and ahead of us a bit, where there's guidance and also a space of being clear, like what we want to have happen, which is harmony. And as we align with harmony and align with peace, if we see that as making more room and giving the universe more room and more room for things to happen for us.
Very interesting, isn't it? Because even myself, in the last year, I have probably been the most active I've ever been with wanting to connect to the spirit world, because I think once you suddenly realise in your life that it's possible, when you feel, oh my goodness me, I've wasted 37 years of however many years of not asking them, for goodness sake. No wonder I'm ageing rapidly, Mark.
Say it isn't so.
Yes. So once you've suddenly realise that there is, a helpful line of communication here, and you get those signs from the spirit world, or when you at least allow yourself to even acknowledge them, and then start to pay them attention, and then start having an open mind. We go through these stages, don't we? But I've seen some things where you just go and and you feel the universe has your back. You've been sent that, and it's very reassuring. I'm before I came into this world, I always wanted to believe in the spirit world. I wanted so much to believe in it, but I spent a lot of years, that could be evidence, that's, but never, I wasn't easily persuaded, Mark. They must be slamming their head against concrete in the spirit world. Listen to me, listen.
But this is where the unconditional love comes in. I think they're not hung up. They're not going like, oh my God, is Jason ever going to get it? They're not doing that. They're going like, yes, yes, yes.
They're encouraging, they're cheering you as you take the wrong turn. Well, at least he's taken a turn.
Well, I think the thing that happens is once we start, I think we all have spiritual experiences, be that a loved one coming in a dream or having a precognitive dream or something happening. But it's just putting it into more conscious practice. And turning points for me have come from getting guidance and ignoring it. And then that sucks. And then it's just getting to space like, I'm not going to do that again. So if I get guidance, like, okay, thank you. And also, we're pretty rude to the divine, I think. We're pretty rude to the angels. Like, where the hell were you when this happened? As opposed to calling them in, as opposed to welcoming, thank you for this, thank you for this going well. Thank you for this podcast talk going well. Thank you for the highest good happening for all of us. Thank you for this peaceful planet. Thank you for everyone having their needs met and exceeded.
Us human race, we're very ungrateful. We don't appreciate them for the work they're doing behind the scenes. We don't sit there and ask them for their help. And then as soon as something goes wrong in our life, well, they're not real because where were they?
Where were they? But we're here to learn. We are here to learn. We are here to learn. And this is, humanity's growing up. I would say specifically America's growing up right now. It's a seeing where, what is it like to be our conscious adult selves? To recognize all the different parts of ourselves, child selves, adolescent selves, critical self, but the conscious adult resonates really well with spirituality, not the others don't. But just seeing, well, why is it that most people get on a spiritual path in their 40s, or older? Things happen, but just trusting that the willingness to let the world be bigger, the surrender of trying to, the Western culture, things are trying to control everything, trying to figure everything out. And the idea that something else should be happening rather than what is happening. What if we let those things go and got into a space of, thank you, angels, for helping me in every single part of my life. Thank you, Grandma, for helping me. Yeah.
Sorry,
no worries.
You made me keep having further questions.
Mm-hmm.
What you mentioned about America's growing up and having to grow up or their awakening. Mm-hmm. What makes you say that observation? Or am I asking the absolute obvious?
Well, adolescent behavior, and also an absence of empowerment. And I think the two issues are discernment and authority, which is our discernment, is, especially around mental health, which is the things that we just accept. Like most people are anxious right now. That's not okay. What if we examine why? There's lots of things to talk about that. And just briefly, with the phones, great technology, not good for our bodies, everything's a short brainwave. Everything's quick. And what is almost entirely vanished are two things, which is long brainwaves, which would be reading a book, meditating, walking in nature without the phone, having a long conversation, but also time to be quote unquote bored and let your brain do nothing and sort. In the saturation of information that our brains are just overwhelmed. And so with our brains working out of balance, there's anxiety.
Well, you only need to, nothing makes that point more real than probably opening up your phone, looking how much screen time you do. And then you realize that, you're actually, how many hours of the day are you actually not having the radio on, the TV on, looking at your phone? And then you wonder why, you're feeling rubbish and you're not feeling great in yourself or whatever. Well,
yes,
even your dopamine system is in a state of absolute madness, in this modern world. And we do need to get, phones have a place. They really do.
They have a place. Yeah.
They have a place, but they are not good. It's do you know what? It's people that are in existence now, that can go back to a point in their life pre-phone, I think are at least we know, we have it to some degree under control. But it's the young people of today who've never known a life without the phone, I think is going to be where the problem is. So I think you're right about that there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great technology, but also wireless radiation is invisible, and so it's just getting into I think it's worth talking about in terms of in doing what I do. If someone tells me they have anxiety, insomnia, or cancer, my first question is, do you sleep next to your phone?
And I bet the
what,
answer to that is nearly 90% yes.
99% yes. And if we think of, and I totally understand some people need to have the phone nearby for safety or for a relative to call. Totally get that. Perhaps there's a space for distance being our friend. And if you don't need your phone right by you, perhaps it's in another room on airplane mode. But if it's right there by your head, the phone is connecting with cell towers. Your brain is registering that activity as light. So sleep has gotten deprioritized. And the priority is like, what about that message? What about that notification? And so if we replicate nature in our sleep environment as much as possible, and perhaps also looking at digital assistant systems, which blast out about, 30 feet of wireless radiation because they're trying to capture your voice. That's a lot of dirty electricity. Those things are invisible. But it's as trusting, what I encourage people to do is try this once. Spend one night without the phone by your head. Turn off the digital assistant things. Maybe turn off the Wi-Fi at night too, and just see how you sleep and see how that goes. So we're taking action there to prioritize this system being regulated. And for sensitive people, one more thought on that, which is that it's a lot of energy on our bodies, a lot of energy on our nervous systems, and to give ourselves a break from it.
There is a lot to be said for that. And even I've recently started wearing these balls. Sounds very rude, actually. I've recently started wearing this like little tube that's got 5 balls that are charged with quantum energy.
Great.
And, sometimes you might have looked at that and thought, does that really work? But it actually does make a big difference. Sure. And I have noticed that I'm a hell of a lot calmer since I've had those on. And we do take this for granted. Wi-Fi, all these different electromagnetic signals that are around us. It is amazing how much our eyes fool us at times rather than allow us to see the true reality of things. But I don't want to not be grateful for my eyes, Mark. That's not what I'm saying. I'm very grateful.
Not at all. No, and it's not making it wrong. I mean, it's great technology, but I think there's an oversaturation and over-reliance on it. And if we think of we see too much, we hear too much. And perhaps it's just advocating for a contrast experience. What is it like to leave the phone at home or in the car and go walk in nature and see how you feel? And just have that contrast experience.
Indeed. So what are some of the greatest lessons that you feel that you've learned along the way from the spirit and angels that have helped you most on your path as you've gone along your journey, Mark?
To have hope, to not give up, to keep dreams on the table, to keep advocating for what you want, keep talking about what you want. That they have our back, that the things that we all experience as humanity is evolving, a commonality, there's so many commonalities in anyone spiritually minded, which would be anyone who's experiencing this, which is we experience trauma, and all the traumas on the surface right now, and that we can heal trauma, that we're not stuck, we're not left behind. And it's a seeing where everyone is experiencing that on a different level. And what we can do lovingly for ourselves is to be willing to heal and trusting the power of acknowledgement as a primary healer, which is like, that happened. And boy, that's really not great. But also trusting that everyone has a different variation of that experience, of feeling victimized, harmed, targeted, whatever it is, and that we do begin to heal it. And if we think of a ratio of, as we acknowledge what has happened and let the loudness of that, letting the hypervigilance that's been created diminish a bit, that we're making more room for guidance to come forward. And the healing happens 1% at a time. that we're not trying to kick open a door, and that we're kind to ourselves. And that if we see the role, how trauma is outpictured in the world right now, in February 2026, and is seeing the timelessness of that, where humans are really not kind to each other. And what if we were? What if we put on the table that no one takes anyone else's life, that we put forward, that we don't dismiss each other, that we don't disregard each other, that we encourage each other, that we circulate generosity, that what is it like to have a world where we don't need borders, and that everyone has enough, that no one gets lost and everyone has enough. So those
if get back to the way of the land, the way of the old. But we're a very long way away from that, though. At the moment, we need to do something to turn things back.
Yes, but we're not done. We're not done, and it's not to dismiss that thought, but it's just regular, just for real. Everyone on the planet wants peace and love. Our methods are entirely different. When I kill all those people, I'll have peace. But that's short-sighted. And just in terms of what do we want to have happen? We all want to have regulated nervous systems and to be able to focus on peace, connection, and reintroducing fun. It feels like fun has gotten monumentally deprioritized.
We do need to get back to having fun. We do. We need to get back to laughing. Even the news, being glued to, because I'm a very curious individual. I want to be looking what's going on in the world,
Sure.
But at the moment, we do seem to be, I feel that we are having some kind of awakening at the moment, and people are waking up.
I agree.
But I think it's like almost like the dials having to get turned up to that, almost like, probably in our own lives, Mark, it had to get to that point until we awakened. I think as a society and everything, it's like the volume knob is on volume 910 at the moment. So it needs to start to happen a bit quicker, doesn't it?
Yes, I think it's already happening. I do think it's already happening. And there's a context for this, which is at this moment, no one is standing still. We're all changing. And it's a recognition of what changes do we want to experience. I think we are all super aware of what we don't want to have happen. And just, so what do we want to have happen? And as spiritually minded people, which is everyone viewing this, we're in a leadership role right now because everyone else is distracted. Or everyone else is caught up in obedience in some way. What is it like to be spiritually defiant? What is it like to essentially ignore the circumstances, ignore what has manifested based on old energy, and to put forward an intention, a prayer, a advocacy for what we want to have happen, which is a peaceful planet where everyone thrives? And to counter things, this comes back to, we spoke several minutes ago about the conscious adult and just seeing, America is Europe's dumb little brother, and just seeing America is obsessed with adolescent energy. What is it like to be a conscious adult in America? What's it like to be a conscious adult and pray for the world? And just trusting that if we look at where there is adolescent behavior, which might sound like I'm better than you, or these people don't matter, you should hate those people. That's all adolescent. And what is a conscious adult behavior is everyone matters, everyone has value, and let's create the world that we want to live in.
Yeah, like my car's bigger than your car, Mark.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you being in America, I'm sure.
Really? Yeah. This is just, I think it's just when we have that lens, I think it illuminates things in terms of like everyone's fed up with the adolescent energy. We're all fed up with it because
it's not for me.
Yeah. But this is getting into, America really resists wisdom. What is it like to have wisdom in America and kindness and generosity? It's interesting,
question, isn't it?
It is a question, right now in February 2026, that there's these Buddhist monks walking across America, and they're being treated with such respect and dignity and circulating goodness. This stray dog is walking with them. The animals know. And it's a scene where that they are embodying a different vibration, a different way to go. And it's just seeing, if we take vibration away from like a hippie idea into this actual life of let's vibrate up here. Most conversations socially are down here. Let's do this.
America needs to be turning to gurus rather than guns, doesn't it? I'm opening up a whole nother can of worms now, aren't I?
It's a can of worms. I think the guru thing is kind of done. And my goal in doing spiritual work is let's do it together. Let's have an experience together. So let's not focus here. Let's focus on us. Yes. And the us is powerful. It's millions of people. But I think it is the space where we are all empowered. That's the heartwarming space, that we all matter, that no one is left behind, that we're all included in all the good, and that we have a say.
Well, I think as well, you're absolutely right. We are in the director's chair of our own life. Sometimes it takes us for a while to realise that, we're not one of the stagehand assistants, one of the backstage crew. We are in the director's chair. We really are. And,
we are.
As soon as you realise that and you take the realisation that if you're putting out the wrong intent and your life isn't bringing you the right things you want, then of course. Mark, it's a delight. I'm loving talking to you. You speak a lot of words of wisdom, so thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Oh, thank you. Would you like to do us the honour of leaving us with a final thought or a pearl of wisdom today, please?
Yeah. Do you mind if we pray?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So thank you, Mother, Father, God. Thank you, Archangels and Ascended Masters, for incredible good happening for all of us right now. Thank you to the angelic realm, the elemental realm, our ancestors, spirit guides, animal guides, and guardian angels. Thank you for showering everyone engaging with this or adjacent to it or hearing about it. Thank you for everyone being filled with love, light, peace, and joy, and knowing that they are seen, they are heard, that they are significant, and that incredible good is here. Thank you for everyone having all their needs met and exceeded, and for incredible good happening for all of life, including people, including animals, including the planet, including the universe. We celebrate incredible good happening right now. We celebrate the highest good for all of us. We celebrate Jason thriving and his podcast reaching millions of people. We celebrate all of us thriving together and having more fun. And with loving clarity and peace, we celebrate hope too. We ask for this or something better right now in all directions of time. And so it is.
Absolutely beautiful. Mark, thank you for coming on to the Soul Sync.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Jason. Thanks for everyone who's listening.